Hey, New York Comic Con. It's great to be back with you. I'm Grae Drake, and today you're joining us for interviews with the creators and stars of 3 really incredible series on Quibi. Now, Quibi, for any of you who are uninitiated, that's quick bites, and it's a mobile-first streaming platform with tons of premium content. There's something for everybody. And all the episode lengths are a little bit shorter, so you can bite or binge at will. So today, we're going to start off with talking about the pregnancy of your nightmares. Did you see how I couldn't even get that out? We're going to move on to a macabre mid-90s murder mystery, and then we'll finish off with Sam Raimi's travelogue of terror. So sit back in your comfy pants, enjoy that pumpkin spice latte, and here we go with the darker side of Quibi. My first guest's new series takes morning sickness to extreme levels. In The Expecting, writer Ben Ketai and director Mary Harron direct AnnaSophia Robb. She's playing a waitress whose pregnancy starts off bad and it just gets so much worse, leading her on a dark journey that finally makes her realize the evil truth behind her conception. So everybody, please welcome director Mary Harron, writer-creator Ben Ketai, and star AnnaSophia Robb. Yay, let the terror begin.
Yes, yay.
Ben, I heard a really disturbing rumor that this was based on some of your personal experience. Is that true?
Well, I can't say personal in as much as being my body, but my wife going through her first pregnancy was definitely a strong inspiration for this. There was a lot of sort of empathy I had during that period, and the feeling that like something foreign is growing inside of you, especially when it's your first baby. I don't know. I couldn't ignore the fact that that was a very powerful feeling for her. And for me kind of as a bystander. So that combined with my childhood love of aliens and fascination with extraterrestrials, it just felt like all those things were like a beautiful alchemy to tell a story.
Mary, what do you think it is about, pregnancy?
I was amazed that a man had written this script because it did get inside the feelings of I've had 2 babies, and it's very true about the first one. It is kind of your own personal horror movie because suddenly your body has a complete life of its own. I would have this insane gnawing hunger like an animal, running into pizza places. And I'm no longer in control of myself. I am a host. And so that feeling of being taken over is the basis of a lot of horror.
AnnaSophia, I have so many questions for you, but can you just tell our audience, if they're unfamiliar with the episodes yet, which are streaming on Quibi, can you tell us, what is Emma's journey up to this point, and give us a little backstory on her character?
Yeah. All right. Well, here we go. Emma she's a bit of a wandering soul. She's sort of in this like purgatory period of her life. And when we first meet her, she's like naked in the woods and something sort of terrifying has happened. She's trying to figure out what just happened to her. Why does her body feel different? And she realizes that she is pregnant. And the pregnancy is terrifying, but it's also given her this sort of sense of purpose. She's very lonely through the whole film. There's a lot of scenes where it's just her. She's just living her life, but having this thing inside of her, even though the consequences of how she got pregnant, she's not exactly 1000% sure. There's this dual relationship where she wants it out of her. She's questioning how it got there. Her body is changing. It's a horrifying experience. But then at the same time, this maternal instinct, this sort of like that there's a hope for her future, that there's something that's coming. And the story takes a lot of twists and turns. And there's a lot of questioning of, is it a human? Is it an alien? Is it something nefarious? Can you trust the people around you who are advising you when you are in this vulnerable state? What I really love about the story is that it does feel very grounded. It is a pregnancy. It's not over the top, but these things are actually horrifying.
In between episodes, I needed to seriously take a breather because I was so worked up. Mary, I know that your fans are going to be so excited to see you return to like this kind of horror realm. Can you give them like a favorite moment or something that you think they could look forward to? It's going to get them really pumped.
Well, I have to say that the clip you're going to show, when I was reading the script, and I got to that scene, it was like, I have to do this. What I love about it, like AnnaSophia was saying, is it takes what is normal and just and finds the horror in it, and just amps it up. So it's all relatable experience. Emma's a much more sort of sympathetic character. She's this kind of girl stuck in a small town. She's had a tough life, but she's also, there's mystery in her. I don't want to give away too much. There'll be points in the story that you'll wonder what is real and what's not, which I think is also part of, because I think really great horror, you lose your boundaries at times. You're wondering what's real and what's not.
It's lingering with me. It really stays. And that's something I wanted to ask you, Ben. Why is it so important that the series really go there in terms of fear and scary moments?
I get great thrills from the idea of luring people into a sense of reality and then showing kind of the messy insides of like what it really means to go through this experience. Honestly, that the experience that Emma goes through is so harrowing that we didn't want to be able to look away from it,
I also heard that you have worked with Sam Raimi.
I did. That was, yeah.
We'll be talking to Sam later, and obviously, who doesn't love Sam Raimi?
Right.
Can you talk about some of the things that you learned in working with him and working on projects with the company?
Yeah, Sam gave me my start. I was just like a stupid kid that came out here to Hollywood from Michigan. And he gave me my first job in the business. And, I got to be a fly on the wall watching his process. And what's amazing is that he's known, he was originally known, he's done a lot of incredible dramatic work and things like that since the Evil Dead days, but he's always been known as a master of horror. And one of the things that stuck with me, it was so sticky and tactile for me to hang on to as a writer and as a filmmaker, was that none of that stuff matters unless you're telling a great story and you have great characters. And hearing that come from him just really kind of has carried me through my entire career since then, and it's just a very important thing to learn as a young wannabe filmmaker, that the scares and the blood and the grit and all that cool stuff that we put in trailers is great, but like you really, when you sit down to watch a movie, if it's not a story that could exist without all of those things, then none of those things really matter. None of those things are going to have the impact.
Now, the setting of The Expecting is almost its own character. I felt like, even Emma's house is like such a rich environment. But I want to ask you just by a quick show of hands, like, are you a woods person in your real life? Like, just anybody love the woods?
I love the woods, yeah.
Oh my, okay, wow, all of you. All right, well, you're wrong. But can you talk about AnnaSophia, like filming in the woods that you guys went to, or wherever those trees were? Because I'm a city girl and it looked to me like you guys were like in the thick of it.
Yes, we were in the woods. Yes, it was cold and wet. It poured. It was pouring rain when we were filming some of those scenes, or during the day, and then we were shooting at night. And all of the lichen and moss turned this incredible green color. The setting itself gave a really intense energy. And for as cold and wet as we were, I really enjoyed that chunk because it felt like we were in the thick of it.
And that's very good for AnnaSophia to say that, because she was in a hospital gown for a lot of this, when the rest of us were in big coats. There's a sort of dark fairy tale quality to the story that, about a little young girl going into the woods, They said there was this sort of classic thing classic storytelling of someone going into a dark wood where strange things happen, where you meet strange and maybe scary things. And I really like the sort of mythic fairy tale aspects of the story and of the woods.
Your background is so amazing, like where you're sitting right now, but I do want you to be very careful about that shed.
Yes,
okay?
Don't go into the shed or the basement. And there's predatory birds wheeling around as well. So
it's like super gorgeous, but I know that nothing good is happening in the shed, and watch out for the birds. Yeah, so cool.
We filmed, we were filming outside Boston, and when we weren't filming in the woods or in Emma's crazy old house, we were in this disused mental hospital. That had a heavy atmosphere, filming at night in the old Victorian mental hospital.
And it smelled awful, and it was such a terrible energy, that whole set.
We won't tell you what happens there or why she has to go there, but it's...
I also wanted to talk about your co-star, Rory Culkin, too. I saw him and I was like, Rory! And I was like, ah! And did you guys have like a rehearsal process? Did you guys have a way of kind of getting to know each other that helped you see more into your characters?
So we went through the script at my apartment, actually, before we started shooting, and we'd take the trains, the three of us, up together and go through the script and run scenes together. And he's so good in everything that he does. He brings this intensity, and also I think what Mary was talking about earlier, what is real, what is perceived, he hits that so perfectly in this show.
He had me convinced that he's actually a short order cook as well.
Yes. Oh, yes. And he had to practice that. And when he had to practice it in the first take he had to do this very complicated thing with frying and bells and orders. And when he finished his first take, the crew all applauded. He done it.
Let's roll an exclusive clip. And AnnaSophia, do you want to set it up for us?
Sure. Emma is in bed. And again, it's playing with this sort of nightmare versus reality. What is her situation? And also, I think our deep fear of becoming pregnant, of what is going to be pushing through. So just, you can take a look.
Before we go, is there any last thing that y'all would like to share about that clip, about what we saw?
It's a great scene because it makes so much sense as a nightmare, but then we're in this scenario where it's like, did it actually happen? Is it real? And Emma's constantly questioning that sort of shadow side of her experience.
Is it too late to add like a disclaimer at the bottom of everything? Like, this is not necessarily scientifically accurate. Because it
We
really
never know.
feels... Oh, God. Just for everybody watching, we want to remind you that episodes of The Expecting are streaming right now on Quibi, and the final one drops this Thursday, so you have plenty of time to catch up. And in the meantime, like, thank you all for being here today and for terrifying me permanently. And that's it, you guys. Nailed it.
Yay.
Great. Thank you so much. That was very fun. Thank you.
Definitely. All right. So because I'm all worked up now, let's take a little bit of a break from straight horror and go into something a little bit more atmospheric. When the Streetlights Go On is a scripted series set in an idyllic small town that's upended by a horrible double murder of a beloved student and a teacher. It doesn't take long to realize that life in this quaint suburban community is anything but ideal, and the truth is far more shocking than anyone could ever realize. Let's take a look at the trailer for When the Streetlights Go On, which is now streaming on Quibi.
The summer of 1995 was the hottest summer in years. The single of the season was Seal's Kiss from a Rose, and Jim Carrey was the biggest star in Hollywood.
If you could, would you go down on yourself?
I heard Marilyn Manson can do that.
People would probably stop reproducing.
Most people aren't aware of the exact moment when they lose their innocence. It usually happens slowly. But for me, it was all at once.
CPD is keeping a close eye on every lead.
I loved Chrissy.
Casper Tatum was easily the town's favorite suspect.
I think I got the hots for the dead girl's sister.
Casper Tatum killed Chrissy. And he's gonna pay.
Did you do it?
You're not fooling me.
Did you see anything?
I saw a lot of things that night.
Our town was put under a dark spell in the summer of 1995. I was 15 years old.
I'm really excited to welcome director Rebecca Thomas and also two of the stars from When the Streetlights Go On, Chosen Jacobs and Sophie Thatcher. I'm always like the person that they choose to talk about like all the scary stuff that they're promoting. And so it's an honor to be talking about this one with you guys, because the thing that really nabbed me about When the Streetlights Go On was really just how atmospheric it was, and it just like pulled me back right into the 90s. And I thought it had me like I was singing like a little TLC. I wish I had a slap bracelet. Like I was totally in it right from the beginning. And Chosen, I wanted to start with you and ask you, like, can you tell us a little bit about Charlie and why do you think he's such a great choice for us to see this story through?
Yes, I feel like Charlie, he just embodies that naivete and the innocence of growing up. And I feel like he's gone through so much throughout the series of the show. Everybody remembers that time when they just were wide-eyed and didn't know anything and they were just excited about life. And I think that's something that we all try to hold on to, but I feel like Charlie kind of touches that feeling for everybody. So I was so excited to play this character and to let people see, how life can sometimes change you for the better or for worse.
Charlie's wide-eyed innocence that you're talking about is one of the reasons that it really, it gave me kind of a feeling of longing, like for days past. Sophie, same thing for you. I wanted to ask you if you could tell us about like where Becky is at when we meet her in this series, because like she's going through a lot.
Yeah. When you first meet her, she has this kind of like elusive, mysterious quality to her. She's definitely been living in her sister Chrissy's shadows, and she's the black sheep of the family. And I think she purposely distances herself from people and just watches everyone from the sidelines. But she has this beautiful character trajectory as she starts to open up as all these new things happen to her. So I think that's special.
And it's interesting to think about a character that opens up so much after trauma.
After all these negative things. Yeah.
Sure.
I think it forced her to grow up really quickly. And that just like sparked an immediate change within her.
Mm-hmm. Now, Rebecca, like let's talk 90s girl. This series really captures it. How did you go about kind of recreating that for all of us that sort of knew what it was like back then?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the 90s and I had two older sisters, and one of them was a beauty queen and one of them was a punk rocker. So I really was attracted to the story because of the characters, and I was sort of the Charlie in my family, watching them and emanating both of them in a little bit of ways in my life. But I felt like with this show, I wanted us to be wearing the 90s and the 90s not to be wearing us. And as teenagers, you could really we could have really leaned into like all of, like you said, the slap bracelets and all of those little details, but I really wanted the characters to shine through, and then sort of everybody around them to kind of show the 90s. And you feel it in the sets, you feel the 90s, but the characters themselves, I wanted to feel somewhat timeless. And Chosen had that quality of just like a person out of time, this innocent guy out of time who was like a little bit ahead of his time in a way, and also a little bit old fashioned for someone his age. And then with Sophie's character, Becky, she actually kind of felt like a little bit 70s to me. Like she was kind of throwing herself back a little bit more. And part of that is what Sophie brought to it, but also just felt very original. And we wanted to be able to be a little bit looser with it, but still have the soundtrack be really nostalgic.
Chosen, I was thinking that with this and with it, you've portrayed young people in like several different eras at this point. Do you do like kind of traditional research? Do you ask people what it was like, or do you just rely on scripts?
I think it's a little bit of everything, because the 90s was such an iconic decade/era. So it still influences everything we do today, and everything recycles, It's a little bit of research. A lot of it is my personal experiences, family members, and then being on set, everybody being so nostalgic. You're picking up so many different things. And Miss Rebecca did a great job of putting us in a place to where it felt easy. It never felt like, oh, I'm about to research something. It's like, oh, that was really cool, and something that I definitely could relate to. And I'm happy to be able to live in the 90s for a couple months out of the year,
Sophie, do you do the thing where you listen to music like before a scene to get in the mood? I always think that's like a cool, that to me is like a cool actor thing.
I do that, but I kind of think that when I'm on set, and especially with such a dark script, it's good to just kind of be yourself and kind of have the lighter moments so you don't take this script home with you.
Rebecca, speaking of the set, I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about what it was like to be on the set with so many young people, because, it's different than an entirely adult ensemble.
Being able to work with just a younger cast was really refreshing. Everybody was super pro, and they just knew what was expected of them. And of course, like people who want to be there, a younger cast wants to be there. It was just a pleasure working with this cast, and also just made it easy. They had energy, so I had energy.
She's an amazing director to work with. She's just so fun, and she has so much confidence in you to do your job. So it's like you come to set, and it's like she said, we're always excited to do more takes, because we know she doesn't need more takes from us, if that makes sense. So it's like, you want another one? And she's like, do you? We're like, no, okay. And then just move on. So it's a very liberating feeling to come to set and know that you have the full confidence of your director, and then vice versa.
It occurred to me as I was watching it that for you two, it must be odd starring in coming of age stories while you are yourselves coming of age. But do you think that it's the participating in stories like this have sort of taught you anything about yourself in the moment? Like,
I feel like, at least with this project, it taught me honesty. And I think that I can be kind of a reserved person, but I grew with the cast, and I kind of started to open up and really just feel like myself. And that's kind of a rare feeling, because I feel very naturally introverted.
Sophie, the really kind of spooky, dour, like scary mood of this is really what pulled me in. Like I couldn't stop watching once I started it. So can you tell me a little bit about that mood on set? Because you were saying that, you needed to leave it behind.
You can't stay in that mindset. I mean, it is your world, because we're in another country, and it's kind of this world that we immerse ourselves in, but we have to be able to turn it off. And I think Becca was so good with that, with bringing in the lighter moments and just making everyone feel really comfortable. I mean, this isn't even that big of a deal, but I had my first kiss with Sam on screen. I was so scared. I was so scared. But like, of course, like Becca's a female and just like made me feel okay and like reassured and confident, like Chosen was saying, always just as confident as possible.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in every project brings this different energy to it. And it sounds like, even though the final result to the audience was like eerie, it seems like the atmosphere on set was really warm, which is something that really fascinates me because it seems it lets you guys do your best work.
Yeah, it was amazing. You know, just it's funny because you go back and you watch the show and you remember recording scenes. The part that you remember more than the actual scene is what happened in between the cuts. You know, so like I'll watch a scene that was really, you know, a really eerie, darker scene. But I remember 10 minutes ago, I was eating tater tots at Crafty. And, you know, like it's a little funny stuff like that. So it really felt like summer camp with some acting scenes, if that makes sense. Like you had scenes where everything got serious, but the way that they paced out the schedule, especially for such a quick shoot, you felt like the every day was, hey, we're about to go in there and have fun.
Can we talk about the neighborhood where you guys shot, like specifically that cul-de-sac?
This idea of a cul-de-sac was really interesting to me personally. I grew up in a cul-de-sac, but for me, this like idea of growing up is sort of like this cul-de-sac thing. And even when Chosen's like riding his bike around the cul-de-sac, like I used to do that. It just felt like for the resources we had, it could be this little sort of stage for us, this sort of American dream, and what can happen there.
There's a really important segment of the story that takes place like at a Halloween party.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so obsessed with like pausing as much as I could to like look at everyone and what they were dressed up like and what was going on in the background. And it just felt like it captured that kind of spooky Halloween essence. Chosen and Sophie, can you tell me like your favorite Halloween costume that you've ever done in real life? I think it says a lot about people's personality, by the way.
Okay, so for me, I dressed up as Heather from Silent Hill 2. I also did Jane from Paris, Texas, which is a classic.
Your Halloween costumes are the greatest. Like when people recognize them and walk up to you.
Then they actually appreciate it. Yeah.
Totally. You just feel like you won Halloween. What about you, Chosen? What's your Halloween, like your best of?
Oh, my best is SpongeBob. I used to have like this huge cardboard with big clog shoes and the tie and everything.
I feel like you're probably the human embodiment of SpongeBob, so that like that's very on brand. Yeah. And I mean that 100% as a compliment because SpongeBob is the best. I just want to keep with the Halloween themes. What is the real life thing that frightens you?
I used to have this like really weird irrational fear of rugs. I was outdoors and I was scared that the rug would just collapse on me.
So you mean specifically when a rug is on display and it's hanging?
It's on display and it's hanging up and they're a bunch, and if they all just fall on top of you, you're crushed.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I love it. All right, when you're watching When the Streetlights Go On, like is there a moment in the show that just chills you to the bone?
I think at the end of episode 2, when Sophie hears the Beach Boys coming up the stairs and walks into her sister's room, that kind of scary thing of like, is there someone in the house? And is that someone gonna hurt me? And if they're not gonna hurt me, that's almost worse in a way. Like that whole scene, every time I watched it, I felt really affected and also just really proud. I felt really proud of these actors, and I really loved the directing in those scenes and the tone. It felt like me.
Mm-hmm. And I thought from my perspective in the audience, I thought technically it was put together in a way that made me ask a lot of questions. It made me more frightened because I wasn't sure what was going on. And so I was trying to figure it out. And I was like, oh my God, like, look out, girl. You're going to get eaten like a zombie to a Beach Boys song. And then it's actually a lot smarter and still as scary as that. That actually is all the time that we have today, you guys. You nailed it.
Thank you for having us. It was just
Great
lovely
job.
to talk to you and to see you guys again. But I want everybody to watch the show because you're amazing in it.
I'm so proud of that show. I'm really happy with how it came out.
Yeah.
Like everybody did a great job, really.
Yeah, and Queen Latifah and Sam Strike and Ben Allers, Tony Hale. Oh my God, I wish they were Mark Duplass, Christine Broseth. They're so amazing.
I'm going to think of you guys every time my streetlights go on.
I got that one.
All right, you guys, thanks a lot. In the spring, Quibi launched 50 States of Fright, a horror anthology series exploring urban legends and folklore from Oregon, Florida, Michigan, Minnesota, and Kansas. Now 50 States is back with tales from Washington, Missouri, Iowa, and Colorado. And as a native Coloradan, I can assure you, we're very scary. So please welcome the creator and executive producer of 50 States of Fright, the legendary Sam Raimi. What state are you in right now?
State of emergency. London right now, but the show we were working on is 50 States of Fright, and of course that's all about the local horror stories from each and every state.
You know, watching this show makes me feel weirdly patriotic.
Everybody loves ghost stories, especially when it's like that house down the block. That's why when the producers from Guns, Powder, and Sky came to myself and Debbie Liebling and said, here's the show we want to make. What do you think? We thought, this is incredible because not everybody has a local ghost story. You know, that old woman that lives on the corner, they never buried her. She just disappeared. People say she's still buried in that house, or she's still dead sitting in that chair. So everybody's got these local stories. And in fact, when we started the show, when we contacted different writers or directors, they said, oh my God, I've got to do my home state. Please save Florida for me. Please save Iowa for me. So everyone really wants to tell their own local tale.
Yeah. Again, like local pride. I think that everybody's mind kind of goes to what state am I from and what's my story. I'm really lucky to be from Colorado, which is an episode that's streaming now. But let's get back to Michigan for the time being. As you and Ivan were writing The Golden Arm, did you dig into any history at all? Did you try to find any kind of facts that supported the story, or did you just go from memory?
We did research it, and we found out there have been so many iterations of The Golden Arm with so many different versions told throughout the years, and it's not only from Michigan. I think it may have come from England originally. It was brought to the United States, and people localized it in their retelling of it, is what we found out.
The series could really just make everyone feel excited to be where they're from because they're going to recognize the stories.
I think so. I think horror stories are kind of international because it deals with the fear of the unknown, something that everybody can relate to regardless of their country that they're from. But I think that local angle that it happened just around the corner in that old creek makes it especially effective.
Oh, always. Yeah. Now we're going to take a look at a clip from The Golden Arm. Could you just set us up with a brief storyline description for us?
Yes, it's a tale of greed and passion. It stars Rachel Brosnahan and Travis Fimmel. And they play a couple in the woods of Michigan. He's a woodsmith. He makes furniture out of the local trees that he mills on his own property. And there's an accident. And in that accident, his wife, Rachel, loses her arm. So that's really the beginning of the story.
Why don't we take a look from the clip while asking ourselves what could possibly go wrong?
Dave and Heather were high school sweethearts. She was the prettiest girl in Alpena County, and she knew it.
Hey, keep the line taut.
Sorry.
Nobody was expecting an accident.
Away! Heather, no!
What are you doing?
I gotta get you free. But after she lost that arm, everything went dark.
There's very little I can do.
I just get so excited when I see something that you've done reuniting you with the woods, like A+. you are kind of famous for putting your actors through a lot when you're shooting, right? I mean, some people say torture, but I would never say that to your face. What was being on set with Rachel and Travis like, and what did they have to go through? Because some of this seemed kind of demanding in the way of stunts and makeup.
They really put everything they had into this picture, and they got along great. We didn't really have a torture time. We had a lot of fun together, and they really were incredible collaborators. So I loved working with them, and my only regret was how short it was.
Something that I love about reading about your filmography when you were first starting, and like the creativity that was coming out of not having a budget, is just all this cool stuff that you would come up with to film. And do you find that even these days, when your circumstances have changed as a filmmaker, that you're still employing like tricks?
Yes, there's always tricks in telling a movie story. It's a little bit like being a magician. You want to give the audience an idea in their head, secretly make the sleight of hand off camera, and then present them with the illusion of what has supposedly happened, and let them fill in the blanks. That's usually the best form of movie making, and it's how all magical illusions are created. They can always come up with something better than you can show them, but it's important to plant the seed so that they can, in their fertile minds, grow a really great nightmare, and then you can give them the tag at the end. But it's important that it be a collaboration, any storytelling.
Do you scare yourself when you're watching your own stuff and you theoretically know what's going to happen?
No, nothing about anything that I do scares me, but I really get easily scared at other horror films. I get completely freaked out when they're made well. I'm like the biggest coward of them all.
Do you find that what has scared you over time has changed?
Well, the real things that scare me, are bigotry, hatred, ignorance, those real world issues. But I'm just jumping into the fantasy world that you're talking about, the fun, frightening stuff of horror movies.
Sure. And I mean, when you think about your movies as a whole, they tend to have like a kind of moral center. Like someone makes a choice that benefits themselves over someone else. Do you see that as a through line? Is that something that you look for or gravitate towards?
I think those stories make sense to me. So I do gravitate toward a basic moral premise because I believe in a possibility of a just world and an orderly universe, as confusing and nightmarish as it can be. It's how I think we all want to live our lives, and I think it's how we want stories to be told.
Right. The really exciting thing is that we're getting more of the 50 States of Fright on Quibi. So Sam, can you tell us what to expect from these new episodes?
One of the episodes that I'm really excited about is called Almost There. It's the state of Iowa. And my good friends Scott Beck and Brian Woods wrote and directed it. And it's about a young engineer who gets a call in the middle of the night. She's the only one around for miles. And one of these giant wind turbines that they have in Iowa is caught in some tremendous storm, and they need her to climb to the top of this thing and fix it. Well, she's had some issues with vertigo in the past and some unpleasant spirits. So it's going to be a story of how she has to revisit her past and try and conquer her fears to perform this heroic task. It's really scary. They did a great job with it.
I'm excited to see this one because it will justify my lack of desire for being on high things. So, thank you. What else can we expect?
Another episode that I really love is called 13 Steps to Hell. And it's a story of this kid that in a cemetery loses his plaything, and it falls down this hole. There's a hole in the cemetery, and the kids look closer, and as they try and reach it, the hole gives way, and this kid falls through, and there's a stairway in this cemetery. It's really a terrifying story, and it's directed by a really great filmmaker, Lee Cronin. He's the Irish filmmaker who made the award-winning film Hole in the Ground. I don't know if you heard of that, but it's a great movie. And he's also the new director for this new Evil Dead movie that we're making. He wrote it, and he's directing it.
Awesome.
There's one that takes place in Missouri. A great new writer-director, Kate Devaney, wrote and directed it. and it's called Dogwood Azalea. And it's the story of this family that moves to this little house in the country, and this little girl is very lonely, but she makes a new friend, but unfortunately the friend had died many years ago in that house. It's really a very creepy story. It's really good. Highly recommend it.
Oh man, that's like me when I was growing up. This is gonna hit too close to home. Sam mentioned the Iowa story called Almost There, and we have a sneak peek for you. So let's roll it.
Time to go. You're almost there.
It's Blake Bentner. I'm with the power department. I got an emergency.
Where's the malfunction?
Where do you think it is? Top of the world. About half an hour, mega storm hits. Our local meteorologist is predicting 20 to 30 mile per hour winds.
Blake?
Sam, it was really good to see you. There's just one more question that I have actually before we go. Is Bruce Campbell okay?
He's doing great. He's up in Oregon. I Zoom with him almost every week, and just to keep in touch with him and for us to make plans on the new Evil Dead movie. So I know yeah.
This is officially like the best video chat that I've had this whole time. I'm so excited.
Thank you for making it so easy for me.
Oh, you got it. Bye, Sam. Stay scary.
Thanks a lot. I'll see you soon.
All right, New York Comic Con, that does it for me. Everybody stay safe and stay scary and be prepared to scream where you stream when you're watching these Quick Bite series and more, only on Quibi. Bye.